Hannah Cranston, it is such a joy to have you joining us from LA today on the podcast. Welcome.
Thank you so much. I am so excited to be here and so excited to meet you face to face.
Yes, so we don't know each other very well outside of having booked in this podcast interview, but I felt like you had so many golden nuggets to share with our audience. And you're somebody that we haven't really had on, an expert we haven't really had on the podcast before. So that's really exciting. But before we dive into all the expertise you have to share, I would love for them to just hear about your background and how you founded your company and why.
Yeah, absolutely. It is kind of a crazy, winding story that I think from, when I was in it, it did not make sense. And now
Hmm.
looking back, I'm like, oh, here's how all of the pieces sort of work together. But I spent the first decade of my career actually as a TV host. So
Hmm.
I was in the media. I got my start on YouTube in the beginning days of YouTube when I was trying to explain to my poor parents that I was going to be a YouTuber. And they were like, that doesn't sound like doctor or lawyer. So could you
Hmm.
explain that to me? And I'd built my career in the media. And I had learned pretty quickly how to build my own personal brand. I had built my YouTube following to 1.5 million subscribers. I had built my Instagram following, and all the while, sort of, doing the TV host lifestyle of constantly waking up at 2:45 a.m. in the morning and going on
Wow.
auditions and all of the different things. And people were constantly asking me to coffee to pick my brain, as I'm sure many of the female entrepreneurs who are listening are very familiar with this sort of concept. And I was, chatting with all of these different entrepreneurs and business owners about how to build their brands in this sort of new digital sphere. And finally, somebody sat me down and said, "Hey, you need to be charging for this."
Mm.
And it was sort of this aha moment, and so gracious of them, because I was giving them free advice. It was so gracious of them to sort of, you know, take me out of this. Oh, sure, like I'm happy to talk about this thing because I'm so passionate about it. I'm so crazy about it. I would talk about it for free all the time. I would still do my job for free to this day. And so that was sort of the moment where I realized that I could build, a separate side gig, side hustle, and do something that I was passionate about, that was in addition to what I was doing at the time. And so I literally Googled like how to start a consultancy. I was like, I don't know what this
Mhm.
is. Like, I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to charge for this. I don't know how to even, I don't know the first thing about starting a business. And so I think I watched like an online e-course and like just randomly found all of this information. And one of my first real clients, first paying clients, um, decided to run for president of the United States of America. So it
What?
sort of changed the trajectory of my career quite a bit. And he called me. I remember he called me and he was like, "Hey, I'm going to run for president and I want you to be the director of our digital strategy."
Wow.
And I was like, holy shit. I that was not on the 5-year plan. I have to be honest. But I really couldn't turn that down. It was such an incredible opportunity. And so I joined his campaign. We were traveling all over the country, spent a lot of time in Iowa and New Hampshire.
Mm.
And it really opened my eyes to this whole other world of communications and strategy, and so many other different ways that my skill set could impact the broader society.
Wow.
And I continued to sort of double down on this consultancy well after he dropped out of the race. And it just started growing, especially after the pandemic. It just started growing more and more and more. And it sort of became an undeniable calling for me.
Mm.
And it was sort of this, I had that moment where I had to sort of decide, am I going to fully dive in head first, feet first, belly flop into this? Or am I still going to try to balance, hosting and what I thought was my dream? Um, and, you know, kind of give 50% to both. And it took a lot of soul searching,
Yeah.
but I decided to go all in on the consultancy and decided to start an agency and hadn't, I built and given strategy and uh, given so much advice to my clients, but I never actually, you know, done the work. And so when I started my PR agency, I'd never sent a pitch. I
Mm.
had never like quote unquote done PR. And I was like, yes, I'm going to figure this out. I'm going to make it work. And here we are 2 years later. And it's just been a wild, wild ride.
So all of that happened within the space of 2 years, from somebody saying, I think you need to start your own company to 2 years later.
So somebody said, I think you need to start. No, that was in 2018, I believe.
Okay.
So that was in 2018. I consulted for a few years, sort of just giving strategic advice, but not pitching and not having a team behind me, being a one-man show, just sort of giving, my advice and sort of walking people through it. And then I had a client come to me and said, hey, I just want you to do all of this for me. I want you to do my PR. I want you to do all this. And I said, yes, great.
Hmm.
And then I was like, I'll figure it out later. And
Mm.
now that was 2 years ago from that point.
Okay.
And so I started hiring a team and we won boutique agency of the year and we're, just growing too fast for me to keep up with. And it's just been
Wow.
incredible.
It feels like you really went in head first and in a great way. And I think because we talk a lot about mindset on this podcast, for a
Mm,
lot of women, that could start to get, number one, really overwhelming, but also your limiting beliefs and fears start to come up of like,
mm,
ooh, I don't know, can I really handle this? Is this growth too fast? Oh my gosh, I have to start like being charge of the social media of someone who's running for president. I don't know, like imposter syndrome massively could come up and a lot of women end up self-sabotaging the success and growth because they need to hold themselves safe and secure and they kind of block that abundance from coming in. What did those self-talks look like and what were some of the beliefs that you really had to maybe push through to keep going?
I think that's such a great question because I think we often talk about limiting beliefs as something we overcome. And
Mm,
I just don't think that was not the case for me.
mm,
I cried a lot. I had a lot of limiting beliefs. I still do both of those things quite frequently. But I think it's doing it alongside those beliefs and
yeah.
just knowing, like they're you're always going to have, I call my inner voice that gremlin. That gremlin is always going to pop up in moments of weakness and it's going to find those little Achilles heels and those moments of vulnerability and it's always going to talk to you, but it's knowing how to just keep going alongside the gremlin. Be like, hey
Mm,
homie, I know you're here with me. Cool, you keep doing what you need to do. I'm going to keep moving forward. And I think
mm,
that's sort of what's been the key for me because you know with each stage, I'm sure you know this, with each stage of your business, there's something new that you're approaching and something new that you're facing where you're going to be like, holy moly, I don't know how to do this. I'm not equipped for this. Who's going to tell me what to do? When does my boss walk in?
mm,
When is somebody going to tell me how to do this? And I think, that's just a constant. And so you have to learn how to do it with those little inner voices and with those fears and just sort of be delusional that you can still succeed.
Mm,
And I
yeah.
think that like radical delusion is the key to success.
Radical self-belief. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you have any practices or they could even be super small, but anything that you do to just keep your nervous system in check with all of that growth, with
Mm.
all of that momentum that is consistently happening for you?
Yeah, I am a big runner. And I
Mm,
think that like, that sort of monotony of steps and just keeping sort of moving forward is actually quite an amazing metaphor that I used a lot throughout my career. It's like, okay, I don't need to run, 10 miles, but I just need to move forward. I just need to take a
mm,
few steps forward. And I think that's something that, you experience in running and that you can apply to your life in so many different aspects, but especially in business, and to keep like progressing. And I also do I don't know if there's a technical name for it, but I do like guttural screams.
yes.
I don't know what the name is, but I will go into my garage and I will just I worry about what my neighbors probably think about my husband, but I will just scream and just like let it out, because sometimes you
Yeah.
just have to shake it out. You just have,
Hmm.
it's so much pent up pressure and you just need to scream it out. And there's nothing that feels better than that,
Yeah.
to be
Yeah.
honest. So that
There's
I don't
definitely
know,
something to be
it's
said for
not
that.
as it's not as zen as saying like I meditate or I tap or whatever it is. I just scream bloody
Yeah.
murder in my
Yeah.
garage.
No, sometimes you need to actually voice it or move it through your body. I think the only thing
Yeah.
stopping me or most people from doing that is the cops being called.
Maybe I should be more concerned that my neighbors haven't called the cops. They're like, finally, this lady is going to be gone.
Oh, maybe they understand the feeling.
Maybe.
So you seem to be very in your business now, very focused on female driven brands and female companies. Was that a like conscientious shift that happened recently for you? And if so, why?
Yeah, I mean, I think I went to an all girls school, sixth through
Hmm.
12th grade. I think female
Same.
empowerment, amazing.
Hmm.
I honestly, I think you like can feel like a girls' school girl from a
Yeah.
mile away, because we just approach the world very differently.
Hmm.
So female empowerment has always been a North Star for me from the get go.
Mm,
Um, and then when I started the business and I started just naturally being attracted to female founders and what they were building and what they were doing. And I started communicating that. A lot of people would come to me like, oh, so you work with like nonprofits. Oh, so it's like a give back mission. I was like, no.
no.
I was like, actually investing in women is really effing business savvy.
Yeah.
Women have higher return on investment. They're better leaders on all different categories. They're more collaborative. I think they're more innovative. So it was really shocking to me that people thought that I was doing some sort of charity by
Mm,
investing in women, when actually I think I was just being really smart.
hmm.
Um, and so that only sort of further made me want to double down and sort of prove to the world that, hey, female founders are no one to be messed with. And I think there's such an amazing opportunity for us to highlight the incredible work that women are doing and don't get enough credit for, even when they are making massive money moves and being these incredible leaders that we just don't give enough credit to.
Mm,
So I've really, really doubled down in that space.
mm. And that's like the premise of my brand as well, is really supporting women
Yeah.
when it comes to abundance and expansion and creating their own paths. So the women listening are very much on that level. And a lot of them are female entrepreneurs, solopreneurs. Some of them are at the beginning of that trajectory. Some of them have been in business for a long time. And I would just love for you to pick your brain and hear from you more about showing up online and how we utilize media in today's world of social media. What are those key needle movers that women need to be focused on to actually feel like their brand and their voice is being heard? And I know that's a really big question, but maybe we just get the ball
Yeah, how is
rolling.
this podcast like a 2 year long audio experience? No, it's such a great question, and I think you know there is a lot of fear from putting yourself out
Hmm.
there because
Definitely.
women were also more subject to trolls and
Yeah.
feedback and judgment and fear of judgment.
Yes.
Um, and I think what we often sort of get in this weird loop of is we get so scared and we it's like a paralysis by analysis because we are so confused and scared and fearful of all of this judgment that we don't show up, and sort of
Yeah.
we self-sabotage ourselves in that way. So I think when it comes to building a brand, I really and fully believe that entrepreneurs and business owners are the next influencers, because people are buying from people. They're not buying from these sort of faceless brands anymore.
Yeah.
They want to know who's behind the brand. They want to know who's the
So
heart of
true.
the brand. And so you have to show up as your brand, whatever that is. And it has to be authentic. And I think that word is so overused, but I mean it in like the deepest, most guttural sense. Because, for example, I curse a lot.
Hmm.
I use like a lot. I went to Duke, but I still sound like a Valley girl. And I used to like really try to hide that and
Mm.
show up more in a more masculine way and not put as many exclamation points in my emails and not put, smiley faces or LOLs anywhere, because I wanted to show up as what I thought a CEO was supposed to show up as.
Mm.
And I realized that once I leaned into how I just spoke naturally and how I chatted with my girlfriends and how I chatted with my husband and just typed all of my emails with all caps and exclamation points and however else, I really felt in that moment, that is when my business took off,
Mm.
because I was showing up as me and not trying to be anybody else. And so I think when it comes to building your personal brand and when it comes to showing up as a solo entrepreneur, an entrepreneur business owner, you have to like come fully as you are and not be afraid or be held back by what you think you should be showing up as. There's so many different people in the space, and I think it can seem so oversaturated, but nobody has your voice and nobody is saying the things the way that you are saying them. And I think that we need to recognize that somebody is going to hear that and it's going to be exactly what they need, even if it's not the way it's been said before, or even if it's not in the LinkedIn sort of the catchy line and then the emoji and all of the different sort of formats that we've seen now that are just like so overdone. I think that is going to be like the real success for so many people who are starting to show up as themselves.
Mm. Where does somebody even start with knowing how to do that? And I guess what I mean
Mm.
is, where is the line between I'm fully showing up as my authentic self and this is who I am, but also, hey, this is my business, this is my client avatar, and this is what I'm selling? Where is that through line or boundary, I suppose, from your expert opinion?
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely a boundary. I don't think, we're not airing all of our dirty laundry. And in that sort of quest for vulnerability and authenticity, the way that I sort of think about it and the way that I, you know, talk to my clients about it is like there is Hannah and then there's Hannah with quotation marks, right?
Mm.
And so I think I show up every single day at work as Hannah in quotation marks because it's just this extra version of myself. So it's still me, but it is the business version of myself. And
Mm.
so I think figuring out that line of where you show up in your business and you show your expertise, but and you show your authenticity, but you're not also exposing parts of your life that, are going to hold you back. Right. And so I think those parts are airing like those limiting beliefs, right? And letting those sort of come through the cracks. I think those parts are oversharing because in in today's world of social media, everybody is oversharing way, way, way too much because they've learned that vulnerability works, but they're not really sharing vulnerability. They're just like really TMIing.
Mm.
And I think, tapping in. And then I think a lot of it is trial and error. And I know that's really,
Yeah.
really scary, but sometimes you just have to throw spaghetti against the wall and see what works and what doesn't work.
Yeah.
And I think those moments, I'd much rather F up and learn than not try something new.
Mm.
So I think,
Yeah.
when we talk to our clients, they're coming from PR agencies that have preached neutrality for so long and being
Mm.
so careful and poised with the way that they say everything. And spoiler alert, that is not real. That
Yeah.
is not life. Everybody has a point of view. And so I think when we're talking to our clients, we're constantly saying, okay, what are your core values? What's your point of view about this political, happening in the world right now? What is your point of view about this policy? What is your point of view about this new, business initiative? Have a point of view. It doesn't mean, talking about whatever you did with your boyfriend last night. It means talking about where you stand on real, powerful, uh, cultural happenings and getting and having the courage and the audacity to voice that. And so I think that's another component that people can really lean into where they feel like they're being their authentic selves and benefiting their business without, you know, going too deep into the personal side of things.
Mm. And when you have a new client that comes to you, like a female-driven brand, in today's world, there's just so many places we could be showing up and doing things online.
Mm.
Do you see a trend, or do you ask your clients to knuckle down or focus on key areas or specific areas, or is that always just unique to the client?
I have a great example to sort of illustrate my answer to this question. Um, it is unique to the client and it is unique to the person, right? Because you have to really understand the human behind the brand as well as the brand, right? So we have an amazing client. She is a CEO of a powerhouse AI platform. So she has
Mm.
developed this new technology, super, super deep tech. So we've placed them in TechCrunch, we've placed them in CNBC, we've placed her in Fortune, and most recently, we've placed her in Inc., not because of the technology, but because of her passion for writing fantasy novels in her free time.
What?
Exactly. Exactly. So I think that's, where you can really sort of get into the approach and how you should show up. You have to get into the person. What is she doing in her free time? What is she's a mom. So we place this, really powerful piece about how she balances being a mom and a CEO and a founder and a startup world in San Francisco. So there's all of these different parts of her that make her so, so, so unique, in addition to developing this incredible technology that is going to change the world and change AI forever. And I'm not being hyperbolic, like it is going to
Mm.
do these things. Um, so there's so many different facets of this person and this business that we can highlight. And so when I think about that, like I think everybody can do that approach, right? Thinking about, okay, what makes me unique, what makes me well
Mm.
rounded beyond my offering and beyond my expertise and beyond my business. What else do I have going on? What else
Mm.
am I bringing to this world? And then that'll sort of um, really indicate where you can show up
Mm.
in the media, on social media, because there's so many other things that make you cool and amazing and unique that are not
Mm.
what you do every day,
Yes.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so maybe that's, for you, Helena, like maybe you're writing also like an op-ed for parents on how to balance everything. Maybe
Mm.
you're, um, showing up in, I don't know, a Dallas local outlet talking about how this new barbecue joint has just completely transformed your take on business because you were so inspired by their founders. Like there's just so many
Mm.
different ways that you can show up depending on what's going on in your life that sort of build all of the spokes of the wheel of
Mm.
building your brand that are beyond sort of the low hanging fruit of like, oh, I do marketing, so I will comment in Forbes or I will comment in Ad Age, and that will be sort of
Mm.
my two North Stars. It's like, no, we are not two dimensional. We are not monolithic. We're so many, like, as you would
Yeah.
say, like juicy bits of people that we
Yeah.
can really highlight across the board that build the fuller brand picture and have that holistic um, impact that
Yeah.
really builds those lasting, media
Mm.
presences.
So, like, I'm a woman who helps women make more money, and I talk about mindset and subconscious work. But on my social media, I could show the real life of, like, yeah, but I spend my afternoons in the park with my
Yeah,
daughter, you know?
right.
Like, yeah,
And how does that all tie into each other,
yeah,
right? Like how does that time watching your daughter play unapologetically in the sunshine impact your take on business and building money mindset, right? Like we know that to sort of overcome limiting beliefs and to overcome and be coming from a place of abundance, you have to play, right? You have to
mm,
come from, and so maybe it ties in that way. Like there's so many different ways that things can come and build out your bigger brand. Maybe you find that cutting your daughter's sandwiches into a dinosaur every morning is your key to cultivating creativity for your business. Like
yeah,
there's just so many different aspects of you that you can be highlighting as a mom, as a business owner, as a newly Texan woman, that make up who you are, that builds that brand profile so beyond the surface. We're not like it's just the tip of the iceberg. And to really build a lasting media presence and to really
mm,
build a lasting brand, you got to get the whole picture in.
mm. I think a lot of the women listening are probably very focused on social media, the
Mm.
Instagram, the maybe the TikTok, YouTube, different things like that. Where do you feel, and I'm sure I know what your answer is, but where do you feel the importance of media outlets and press come into play when it comes to a brand? Because I think that's an aspect most people either think isn't for them or aren't focusing on.
Mm. I think when it comes, depending on your business, I think when it comes to press, it's all about building legitimacy and building your brand,
Mm,
right? So when you have those placements in those big name brands, when you are placed in Forbes or you have, a segment on Today Show or Good Morning America, it provides that extra legitimacy, that social proof that lets your following lets your customers know, oh, this is the real deal. And then you're finding people who wouldn't otherwise find you because you're giving your 5 tips on money mindset on Good Morning America. You're reaching a whole other audience that isn't in your social media bubble, that is not influenced by the social media algorithm, right? You're meeting all of these different people where they are when they're not searching for you. And I
yeah.
think that is such a powerful tool in your toolbox because when I'm trying to figure out let's say I'm trying to figure out, okay, how can I handle my limiting beliefs, I'm googling that, and what's popping up, it's not Instagram, right?
Mm,
It's media outlets. When I'm
mm,
up at 3 o'clock in the morning being like, I have crippling anxiety because I don't know how to take my business to the next level as a CEO and we're growing so fast, I'm Googling that information, right?
Yeah.
I think we get so much information from um, influencers that is amazing. That is so really powerful. And that we find them online and it's great. But when you're up at 3 o'clock in the morning and you're wanting those answers, you're reading online, you're looking at different media outlets, and you're consulting what we call press, right?
Mm.
So I think there are different places to connect with your audience that are, um, at your fingertips. And I think there's just so much amplification that can still be had for people who've built their businesses on social media, which is what I did originally. And then I tapped into press and I was like, holy moly, trying not to curse.
No,
I'm
you
trying
can
to be
curse. You can curse. It's fine. We have an
I'm
explicit
showing up as
rating.
my inauthentic self by not cursing. But you have those moments where you can really, really see the impact of what a placement can do for your business and what it can do for you. And we have that
Yeah.
with clients all the time. We're like, do I really need press? Look, I have, 200,000 followers. Like we have a great, revenue. I don't really need this. And we're like, okay, give us 3 months. And then they come back to us and they're like, okay, can we have more services? Can you do this? Can you do that? Like they really start to see the impact, not only on the ROI side, but all of a sudden, then they're getting, new customers. Now they're getting investors coming to them. Now they're getting,
Mm,
if they have a product, they're having retailers come to them because they've heard about it, they read it, they've shown up in these different places where
yeah.
those people reside rather than just kind of with social media, oftentimes waiting for people to come to you. Like you
Yeah.
have to put yourself out and then they come, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I'm the closest I came to that is I had a book tour
Mm,
and I didn't actually have, I mean, I didn't have that many social media followers at the time, but they both directly impacted each other because it also added like legitimacy to what I was
yeah,
doing. And people were seeing me being interviewed on all of these talk shows and traveling around both in the UK and America, being interviewed. And it creates momentum and it creates momentum
yeah,
in a different way and it helps you stand out. And it just does create that legitimate factor, I think.
yeah, yeah. No, I mean, the thing is it is the way of the world, right? And people like that sort of social proof from these outlets that we've grown up on and that we've grown to trust. And I'm built, like I said, like I had 1.5 million subscribers on YouTube. And once I was on, hosting on Good Morning America, that's when people started to really pay attention.
Mm,
It is just the nature of the world that we live in. And it can just open so many doors for you that I don't think you realize until you do it. Like you said on your book tour, where you were like, oh, I've had, you have this podcast, you have your social following. And then when you have those, interviews, even if it's in local markets or more niche outlets or whatever it is, that's when you get that sort of brand notoriety that can really start to amplify the rest of your work and all of the foundation that you've built on other platforms and
mm,
mediums.
yeah. As someone, and not necessarily talking directly just about your clients, but you even yourself as a business owner, especially as someone who has built and experienced a very large following online, how did you or how do you consistently show up without burning yourself out? Because it can constantly feel like a bit of a rat race online, especially with social media. And you're also running a company and you also have, your responsibilities. What advice would you have for someone who has a love-hate relationship with social media?
If they figure out the solution, can they call me? Can I give my personal number? No, I'm gonna be completely honest. It's hard.
Yeah,
It is really, 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 really hard. And I think actually giving yourself the permission to take a break
yeah.
is the key. Because if you keep pushing, keep, you're not gonna create good content. You're
Mm,
gonna create burnout and you're not gonna give yourself the time and space to think and be creative and try something different. So I think, the key there is giving yourself permission to take a break, try something different, do a different type of video, uh, show, yourself cutting the sandwich into a dinosaur or whatever it is. You know what I
Right.
mean? Or show yourself at the park. Um, I think giving yourself permission to take a break and giving yourself permission to not always be pushing on all cylinders is the best advice that I can give. I've been through those modes of like, okay, I'm going to create a video every single day, and this is how I'm going to create my brand. And then my video content was shit. It
Mm,
was real. When I put that kind of pressure, it's horrible.
yeah.
But then when I, let inspiration strike and I sort of think about, okay, what are those moments of quote unquote genius throughout my day where I recognize something or I have this aha moment with a client? How can I just, you know, highlight that throughout my social media? That's when things really work. And
Yeah.
I'm not getting burned out because I'm letting it sort of naturally happen, um, versus just putting the undue pressure on myself to make something happen that is just not authentic.
Yeah, totally. It's like it's actually refreshing to hear because the truth is there is no one size shoe fits all and there is no formula and actually we have to really these days just go with the flow with it
Yeah.
and yeah, showing up as your authentic self. I do the same thing if I have a nugget of inspiration or I'm listening to a podcast, I'm like, oh, that's really good. I just make a note in my app. And if I feel
Yeah.
like showing up and talking about it, I will. If not, I'll come back to it. Like, yeah, it just
I
can't be
think people,
forced anymore.
right. And like everybody, like we can all call bullshit that when we see
Yeah.
something and it doesn't feel real and it feels forced and it feels fake, it's not going to hit. It's not going to resonate. So why expend your energy on something that is not going to work anyway? I mean, I think our energies are, you're a mom, you're a business owner, your energy is so precious,
So precious. Yeah.
so precious. So, I mean, that's why we do PR, because we know that those moments are impactful. You're getting a number of hits a month. You're not doing it every single day because you like that energy is precious. You have to preserve that. So I would rather do something that is way, way, way higher impact where I'm going, hard in the paint and I have that one big moment that then, you know, pays in dividends later, rather than doing something every single day and expending myself on things that just don't feel me and don't feel aligned.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I love hearing that. Um, I would love to ask, as someone who has created and generated a lot of success, also financially for herself and her business, what is a really big piece of advice or tip that you would have for women when it comes to making money online
Mm.
and starting their business and growing it? I know those are three separate things, but whatever comes up for you specifically in that.
um, when it comes to, I didn't make a ton of money for most of my 20s.
Mm,
And I think I got really comfortable in that.
mm,
Um, and I was sort of like, oh, this is the status quo. I have to hustle. And I don't know, maybe someday I'll marry rich and like it'll be fine. And I think I was in that mentality for a long time. And then when I started to make real money, um, I really struggled with it. If I'm being
mm,
really honest, it felt really, um, it didn't feel sort of aligned with where my mindset had been. And so I think I, in a weird way, denied it for a long time
yeah.
and just sort of pretended like I was still this like struggling artist. And I was still in that mindset, even though my bank account did not reflect that. Um, and I think in a way that helped me, hustle even harder and build everything. But now I really, really embrace all of that abundance coming in and embrace all of the, wealth coming in, but wealth not in necessarily like monetarily terms. Like the fact that clients are coming to me and the fact that we're now attracting this incredible, brilliant talent. And I'm surrounded by these women who are just so fucking genius every single day. Like that is the wealth that like I hold so near and dear to my heart. But now that I've sort of accepted the growth of the business and sort of leaned into it more, it's growing exponentially. Like
Mm,
it, we're just growing exponentially. And because I've been like, oh, this is the status quo now.
yeah.
We are a really effing successful business. And that is the definition. And I think when when it comes to mindset, when you say I am, we are, it just, you manifest it.
Yeah.
And I think we manifested it combined. We mixed some manifestation with a lot of fucking hard work.
Of
And then
course.
it has,
Mm,
come to fruition.
mm,
But I think, really just leaning into it and defining yourself as such it can
mm,
be really, really powerful.
mm. The universe responds to conviction, not confusion. And so I can
Mm,
really hear when you talk about your business, the conviction behind it. I fully believe
mm,
it. It's embodied. You are a successful woman who makes a lot of money, and that feels very clear in your body.
mm.
Um, so congratulations for making that leap and really transforming your what I call inner money set point from I can struggle to no, this is who I am.
Yeah, I'm coming to this aha moment with you right now. I never really thought about it this way, but I think that's so, so, so powerful. And I think it's true with everything. When
Yeah.
you are so, like I said in the beginning, when you are so radically, I say delusional, you say conviction, tomato, tomato. When you are so radically like delusional that you're going to succeed, you really end up succeeding. And I
Mm,
think that goes, it's so true for making money. It's so true for succeeding in business. It's so true for, uh, getting press or building your brand and everything like that. You just have to be radically, have that radical conviction, that radical
yeah.
delusion. And that's really, I think, the key to winning.
Yeah, I love that. This has been so powerful, and I love your energy. I know who I'm coming to when I write my next book. I don't know exactly when that's going to be, but it's somewhere on the pipeline.
I am so excited to read it. That is incredible.
So thank you so much. Where would you most like to direct people to connect with you?
Yeah, they can find me on Instagram at Hannah Cranston or follow us at Team HCM on Instagram as well, where we share all of our wins and highlights and tidbits when inspiration strikes.
Yes, I love it. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much, Helena. It was such a pleasure.